you are going to perform order of operations, what we say backwards and we do the opposite. We do the opposite because we're going to be moving across an equal sign. When you move something across an equal sign, you always do the opposite operation that's there. Okay? What you're looking to do is you are going to isolate, means get by itself, your x squared or the parentheses squared. So you need to isolate the x squared term. Notice it's an x squared. There's no number in front of the x squared. Okay? So you're going to either isolate the x squared or you're going to isolate the parentheses with the square. You're going to get that on the left side by itself. And once you do that, the next step would be to find the square root. A lot of people have been saying that today. And I put the square root symbol there. The square root on your calculator, in order to get that, you have to do a second and then the x squared key. Okay? So notice on your red calculator, you have to hit that second key first and then the x squared. Now, when you solve something that's x squared, when you are doing your x squared, okay? So if I go back, and you don't have to write this down, but when I had an equation like x minus 3 equals 7. Okay.
You don't say minus 3 and put a 5 though.
Did I say 3?
You put that.
Okay, I said 5. So I meant to say 5. My mouth was not saying what I thought. Okay, so x minus 5 equals 7. How do you solve that?
You add 5 and square.
You add 5 to the other side, and you get how many answers? One answer. Okay? So this has one answer. Okay? If I had x squared minus 5 equals 7, does anybody know how many of those would have?
2.
It's going to have 2. Why is it going to have 2 answers?
Because x squared.
Very good, Jonna. Because of the x squared right here, I'm going to have 2 answers.
So if it's cubes.
Okay? Yes, exactly. If it was cubed, it would be 3.
Wouldn't the answer for this be square root of x equals the square root of 13? No, 12.
Yes and no. Okay? So whatever that exponent is tells you how many answers you're going to have. So on the front of this, I'm going to put a star, and I'm going to say 2, and I'm going to change it. I'm going to put 2 solutions. If you want 2 answers. So you're going to get 2 answers for these problems. Okay? There's exceptions, there's special cases involved, but for the most part, you're going to have 2 solutions for these. Okay? Okay, so if we look at the first type of question, so if we move this flap and we look at the first type of questions, these are all going to be of the form ax squared plus c equals 0. So in other words, you have to isolate the x squared. You have to get the x squared on the left side by itself.
I have a first answer.
Okay. Good. You can keep going. You will need your calculator. Not all of these come out to be perfect squares, so just FYI. So if we're looking at this first equation here,
You divide by 3.
yes, if I have to get the x squared by itself, you're going to need to divide by 3. And so you're going to have x squared equals 192 divided by 3
64.
is 64. And then we have to take the square root of it.
8.
Okay, so the calculator gives me 8. When I say the square root of 64, it's 8. But, as Jonna just said, we have 2 answers. I only wrote 1 down. Where's the other answer? What?
It's there. 8 times 8 equals 64.
Yep, that's correct. That's what that's saying. But there's still another answer. Where's the other answer?
Is it a squared?
Oh, square root of 8.
No.
Is it a squared?
Nope.
Is it the square root
What
of 64?
other? 8 times 8 is 64, right? What other number can I multiply by itself and get positive
One.
64? No,
One
1
and
times
64.
1 is 1.
64 times 1.
I mean, 64
No.
times 1.
It's the same number. Square root has to be the same number multiplied twice to get you 64. 8 times 8 is 64. I agree. There's another number. Where is it?
8.
Nope. Where is it that?
Nine.
Yeah.
64.
64 times 64 is not
Bro, we already
64.
did that.
Bro, let's go though.
Use your calculator. You got a calculator in front of you. Try. Trial and error. What other number can I multiply
32.
by itself? No, 32 times
65.
Oh, 65 times 65 is not 64.
Is it 16?
They're not the same number.
Seven.
It has to be the same
They gotta
number.
multiply to get 64?
It's the same number multiplied by itself to give you 64.
Is it 2 to the 6 power?
8 is one of them. 8 times 8 is 64. What's the other one?
Negative 8.
Negative 8.
That was tricky.
I was about to say something.
This time you like, bruh.
Okay, so you have two answers. You can write this as 8 and negative 8, or you can put plus or minus 8. Math Excel will be very specific when you're given these questions on Friday, which way they want it written out. Okay? Okay. Your calculator will always only give you the positive version. You have to be smart enough to know that you have two answers there because we have an x squared. And the other answer becomes the negative version of it. Okay? Okay, so number 2, we are going to subtract 1. And we have x squared equals 16. Once I isolate the x squared, I'm going to take the square root of it. And in your calculator, you have the square root of 16, which is going to be plus and minus 4.
Wait, so
If you only put 4, it will be marked wrong every time.
how we supposed to put that?
You put a plus and a minus 4.
Like
How
I'm
does
saying, how
that-
do we put the plus and minus together on the computer?
There's a symbol on there, and you choose that symbol. You know how you got the symbol bar at the bottom? It's there. Or you can write it as 4, comma, negative 4. It will accept, usually it accepts either answer. But on Friday, you'll be able to look at that.
It usually does.
It usually does. Okay, number 3, Antonia, what are you going to do?
Subtract 3.
Nope.
Add.
Add. 3 from both sides.
So you get negative x squared equals negative 7. Have you isolated the x squared?
No.
No. So as Shamira said, you have to divide by negative 1. So you're going to get x squared equals 7. Now your x squared is by itself. So now is when you take their square root.
2.6.
And so you're going to get x equals plus or minus, and the square root of 7, you're going to go out 2 decimal places.
2.64.
2.6, I believe it's 5.
It's 4.
It's 4, but the third digit is a 5, and the 5 tells you to round up.
So we
True.
Yes, it will tell you on Math Excel which place to round to. Okay, you're going to have to read carefully because all of these problems are not the same. So it would depend on
6.5.
how you do or not. Okay, number 4.
This is going to be 0, isn't it?
Africa, what am I going to do for number 4? What's the first thing? How do I get that 25 over to the other side? Yes, so I'm going to subtract 25. So I'm going to get x squared equals 0.
It's just going to be 0.
When I take the square root, quit talking out, please.
Sorry.
When I take the square root, what is the square root of 0? 0. Can I put plus and minus out in front of 0?
It's already 0.
Well, you can technically put plus or minus out in front of 0, but 0 is 0, so you don't have to. Okay? You have to understand, but there is 2 answers. They both just are 0.
Okay.
Okay, number 5. Trent, what's the first thing that you're going to do on number 5?
Close to
Yep. So I get 3x squared equals 48. And then what, Trent?
8x squared equals 48.
No, I gotta get rid of the 3. How do I get rid of the 3? Yep. So 48 divided by 3,
16.
Trent, 16.
Somebody else said it first, and then I said it again.
And then what's the square root of 16, Trent? Nope. Put it in your calculator. What is it?
4.
Not just 4.
Plus or minus 4.
Okay, you know.
Plus or minus 4.
Sniper game, cut.
6. You want to do it? Plus 3. So I'm going to get 4x squared equals 60. Okay, Trey? So I get x squared equals
You said your ex.
15.
Would that just be
And then what's the square root of 15? 3.87. So that is how you are going to do the problems when there are not parentheses involved. It just has an x squared. Okay? Questions on any of those? Okay, so the next group, the next set of 4 problems, have a few more steps involved, require a little bit more slow down and think about what you're doing. So what I have to do is I have to isolate everything that's in parentheses. So the x minus h squared. I have to get that by itself. Okay? So in order to do that, if we go up to problem number 1, I'm going to have to add 25. So I have the quantity x plus 1 squared equals 25. Now, I have isolated my squared. Okay? No, there's no distributing here. You are now, once you have isolated your parentheses, that quantity squared, you take the square root.
All of that?
Yep,
You like that?
yep.
Ain't it 5 though?
Well, you're going to get 5 on the one side. On the left side, when you take the square root of something squared, they just cancel each other out. Okay, so this is going to be x plus 1. And then the square root of 25 is 5. Or it is negative 5. So you have to have 2 equations. One is going to say x plus 1 equals 5. The other one's going to say x plus 1 equals negative 5.
so use the
Okay?
plus 1.
So it's a little bit more steps involved. You cannot just put plus and minus here. No, that doesn't work. Okay? You get 2 equations. Now you have to solve those 2 equations. So I'm going to subtract 1. So this part of my equation is going to have the value 4. And I'm also going to subtract 1 on the other side, but this side of my value of my equation is going to be negative 6. Notice what happens. You do not have plus or minus the same number. You get 2 separate numbers. Okay? So you have to set up 2 separate equations. So when you have parentheses, you're going to have to divide this into 2 separate equations. Okay? Think about when you see parentheses, the first one's going to give you, the first parenthesis gives you one equation, the second parenthesis gives you the other equation. So number 2, what is the first thing that I'm going to do on problem number 2? Go ahead, Shamir. Okay. So we will have the quantity x plus 3 squared equals 16. Square root of both sides, so I'm going to get x plus 3 equals, and,
Are you Shamir? Are you Shamir?
go ahead, Shamir. What's the other equation?
Minus
minus 4. Okay? So how am I going to move that 3 to the other side?
Subtract 3.
So I'm going to get x equals, and I'm going to get x equals negative 7. Very good. These are your two solutions. Right there. Okay, number 3. What are you going to need to do first on 3? Kaylee.
3, you're going to subtract 30.
Okay. 30 minus 30 is 0.
And square root.
Take the square root. So I'm going to get x plus 1. What's the square root of 0? 0. Do I also have x plus 1 equals negative 0? No. So because it's the square root of 0, you're only going to end up with one equation and one value. So I get x equals negative 1. Number 4, I'm going to put a star around. We put stars around special cases. This is a special case. The special case, if I subtract 81 to the other side, I'm going to have x plus 1 squared equals negative 81. And if I take the square root, I will have x plus 1 equals, what's the square root of negative 81? No. No.
81.
No. Error. In your calculator, if you take the square root of a negative number, it's going to come up domain error. Because you cannot take the square root of a negative number. Your calculator will not allow you to do that. So if you get that, something that says domain error, you're going to put no solution. That's a special case. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. So those are the two types of questions that we're going to focus on this week moving forward. Now you have another page here. How does this relate to what we've been doing?
Because
So,
it's the same thing. Except it got a graph.
right, so we're not graphing these, we're solving them by hand, but it is the same thing. So on the graph here, so on this graph, somebody tell me how to graph x squared, or negative x squared plus 9. Who remembers? Jonna, you do it?
Don't you gotta, since don't it open up, or no, it open down?
It opens down,
Because it's a negative in front of the x.
correct?
And then you go, don't you go to the left, no, to the right, 9.
Neither.
Wait, no, I mean, don't you go like vertical or horizontal or something like that?
You'd go vertical,
Yeah,
so are you going to go up or down?
down, up and down,
Which one? If it's plus 9.
up and down.
Okay, so you're going to go up 9. So from your vertex 0, 0, you're going to go up 9. And that's your vertex. And then plot your points, which are on your table over here. So I'm going to have go left 1, down 1, right 1, down 1. I can go right 2, down 4, and left 2, down 4. Now, you don't normally have to plot this point, but we're going to plot it anyways on here so we can talk about how it relates to the project that we did last week for those of you that weren't here, etc. So the next point, if I want left 3, I would have to go down 9. And if I want right 3, I would have to go down 9. And this would be my parabola. We have 2 points right here, and they have a special name. Does anybody remember from either their project last week or just remember in your notes what the name of those 2 points are? Go ahead. X what? X-intercepts. And we also call those zeros of your equation.
Because they're on the 0 for y.
Yes. So the x-intercepts are at negative 3, 0, and 3, 0. So we talked about that on your vocab. It's also on page 51 and 52 in your notebook. Okay, those are your x-intercepts. Now, how does that relate to what we have been doing today? Well, if I go to solve this equation, so if I subtract 9, and I get negative x squared equals negative 9, I'm going to divide by negative 1. So I get x squared equals 9. When I take the square root of 9, I get plus or minus 3. So when we graphed it, is where we crossed our x-axis. When we solve it by hand, those are your solutions. So if you look back on page 51, when we did that vocab lesson, it tells you that these are x-intercepts, these are zeros, and these are solutions. Okay? If you're solving it by hand, Math Excel is going to say find the solution. If you're solving it graphically, Math Excel is going to ask you for your zeros for your x-intercepts. So you need to understand that terminology, what you will be asked to do. Okay? Okay, so if I solve x squared minus 4 equals 0, if I add 4 to the other side, I get x squared equals 4. And what's the square root of 4? It is 2 and negative 2. Okay, so from that, if my solutions are 2 and negative 2, could you tell me my zeros without having to graph it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Negative 2, 0.
Negative 2, 0, and 2, 0. Could you go? Now, we can graph this because we need extra practice with graphing. So if I was going to graph this, this would open up, and you would go down 4. So I'm going to go down 4. And you can see that your x-intercepts are also your solution.
Special cases, I'm guessing.
Nope. Just got more steps involved on 5 and 6. So if we look at 5, first thing that we need to do. No, we're never going to distribute.
Add 6.
Add 6, that will be the first thing. So we're going to have 2 times the quantity x minus 5 squared equals 18. Now, you still need to get the x minus 5 squared by itself. So I have to get rid of the 2.
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2, because this is multiplication. So we're going to have x minus 5 squared equals 9. Now take the square root. So we're going to have x minus 5 equals 3, and we are going to have x minus 5 equals negative 3. You are going to solve that by adding 5, and so I get x equals 8, and I get x equals 2. Now, you guys are going to do number 6, and I'm going to preference it by saying it is not no solution.
Oh.
Then you are going to get either myself or Miss Jacob to sign off on number 6. If you don't get the mark, you don't get the credit for today. So you have to get us to sign off on number 6 in order